So I'd like to tell you a story. One day, a young girl came home from school starving. She ran in the kitchen to see what was cooking for dinner, and she saw a pot on the stove, steaming hot, going clank, clank, clank. So she thought, ew. She ran to her mom and said, "Hey, Mom, what's for dinner?" Her mom said, "It's on the stove." She said, "But there's nothing in there but bones." And the mom pulled the lid off of the pot. And the girl looks inside, and sure enough, there are 3 bones clanking around in a pot. But the majority of the content of the pot was a delicious simmering stew. And that stew was simmering silently. I was told this story one day when I was on my way to college. I went to the Lebanese American University, the Byblos campus in Lebanon. And my instructor, Professor Jadon, told me this story when I came to class late one day. There was some political unrest, and I had to detour. And the detour was very frustrating. I was exacerbated, and I was so annoyed with what I had to endure to get to class. What Mr. Jadon told me is that just like the story of the stew and the bones, the political unrest can grab the attention of the day, but really the value and what's going on is just like the content of the stew. It is us, the folks who are coming to class, who are having a productive day, and who are giving to the community and supporting and not causing the delays. Much like the loud bones, the political unrest can consume that kind of attention. So, moral of the story is that we are the stew, we are the valuable ingredients, and we don't make a lot of sound. If you watch the news, you may have seen in recent days that Lebanon has been reported on in terms of violence and wars, and there's no shortage of stories of things that are happening. And this wouldn't be the first time. Lebanon is notorious for its civil war and the violence and the religious divide that consumes much of its image. In fact, ever since I came to America, I've been told by friends and strangers alike of how crazy it must have been for me growing up in a country where there's such religious divide, and probably it was difficult for me to practice different faiths. So, a little bit about me. I am half American, half Lebanese. My father is a Sunni Shiite descendant, and my mother is a Jewish Christian descendant. This makes me half and half. For the first 21 years of my life, I grew up in a small town called Burj. It's also known as Ljumi. It is located in the northern part of Lebanon. And for context, the Lebanese government issues a government ID for every citizen. And on that ID, the religious affiliation of each citizen must be documented. That religious affiliation is documented based on the faith of the father in that household. Being born in a multi-faith household and having a Muslim father, my documentation said that I am a Muslim regardless of what I practiced. This is interesting because one of the things that the documentation is used for, it determines what government seats that citizen can run for. For example, the president of Lebanon always must be a Christian person. The prime minister must be a Muslim person, and so on. Having grown up in this multi-faith household, we celebrated all of the religious festivities. We celebrated Christmas and Eid simultaneously, for example. And of all of those festivities, my favorite is Christmas. Every Christmas, my Muslim father chopped down a Christmas tree and brought it home for my mom, who decorated it and made sure we all had gifts under the tree. She also made sure that my Muslim cousins had gifts under the tree. I remember one Christmas morning particularly when I shoot back to those days. And this Christmas morning, I woke up, it was so cold, and I was so excited to open all of the gifts waiting there for me. On my way to open them, my mom said I could not open any gifts until my cousin Liwet showed up and we would open them together. So I ran to the balcony. I stood there waiting for Liwet to come out of his house, and Liwet lived down the hill, so I had my eye on his house. And I waited and I waited. And finally, Liwet's silhouette emerged from his house, and we immediately locked eyes. and he was waddling up that hill so fast. And we did not break eye contact, not once, until he showed up all the way, finally made it up the stairs, made it into the living room, and we tore into those presents. We had a blast. It's one of my favorite memories. And when I recall, I realized that I can't even remember what my gifts were that day. I just remember the spirit, the excitement, the love, and I remember celebrating a Christian holiday in a Muslim household. And unfortunately, not every one of my memories is as joyful. There's been some sad things that have happened growing up in an area with war. One of the most tragic things that happened right after this beautiful Christmas morning was that my mother was murdered. And she was murdered in a terrorist attack. Needless to say, things were never been the same after that. We've been unpacking from that tragedy for a very long time. And when that happened, my father was overseas. So my siblings and I were home alone, and we did not know what happened to our mother. We just knew she didn't come home that day. And everyone in town knew, except us. They didn't want to tell us what happened, knowing that our father wasn't home. So as the hours went by, this very nice Muslim family that lived next door decided to invite my sister and I over for a sleepover. They decided not to tell us anything about what happened, but instead to take our mind off of worrying where my mother was. So I remember this teenage young man, his name was Majid, and Majid started playing games with my sister and I, giving us riddles, guessing games. Each time my sister and I guessed correctly, Majid gave us cash. And he was dropping that cash, and my sister and I were in heaven, not knowing and completely forgetting to worry about where our mom was. So the next day, Majid put us on his motorcycle and took us to a grocery store to buy a ton of candy with all the cash that he gave us. And what reminds me about that is there was no religious divide in that moment. Majid was a Muslim kid. My mother was not. It was a humane act that Majid did to help us get through the day. And while the news was waging with information about a terrorist attack and a murder and a tragic story, my memory of that day is of a fun time, a sleepover, lots of candy, and found out I'm really good at riddles. So a couple years after that, my dad found a local Christian American school. And this school stood out because it was English speaking. And in order to upkeep our English language, my dad enrolled us there. And the school itself is called Tripoli Evangelical School for Boys and Girls. It was a great experience. But one of the things that happened to me there is I think the political things that have been happening started to weigh on me. I started to become depressed of sorts, and I really couldn't tell you today exactly what I was feeling. The best way I could describe it is that my light was dimming, and it was a hard time. And my fourth grade teacher noticed. Miss Abdel Masih chose me out of 90 kids to give me a student position to be her assistant. Now, mind you, this position is usually preserved for kids with high academic achievements or high ambitions, etc. I didn't have that. I didn't have any ambitions. I was barely passing. I was barely there. But I think Ms. Abdel Masih noticed that I needed it. And you can imagine my surprise when she called my name. And it took me years to realize that that was actually an intervention for my well-being. Ms. Abdel Masih made room for me. She helped me regain my confidence and my strength, and she was probably out of an assistant. And so while the news raged stories of the religious divide, this Christian teacher, part of the community stew, really may have saved a Muslim kid's life. So after some time, my dad remarried, and my dad remarried a devout Muslim this time. Even in her strong Muslim faith, my stepmom always made sure to keep up those traditions that were there by my biological mother. So that included having a Christmas tree every year and opening gifts on Christmas morning. And never once did she ever bring up how that might have conflicted with what her faith does on Christmas. So, having had these experiences, you may understand my cognitive dissonance when I hear news of the religious divide and intolerance that's happening in Lebanon. And then when I hear stories that are almost as gnarly as bones clanking in a stew, it occurs to me that most viewers of those stories probably don't hear the stories of the nice folks who do nice things in the community. That people rich in humanity and in character, they don't make a lot of noise. They don't make the news, and they often don't get noticed. All of these stories that I just shared with you are decisions that folks made when no one was looking. They were not expecting to get acknowledged for those actions, and some of these stories are being told today for the first time. So the stew of the community is working silently every day in every community to make everyone's life better around them, especially the lives of those that are vulnerable, who may be living in historical times and don't even know it. So growing up in a country specifically known for years of civil war due to religious divide, I can tell you that the vast majority of my memories don't include the war and don't include religious divide. But instead, I remember people like Mr. Jadon, and I remember Miss Abdul Masih, and I remember Majid. I remember fun Christmas mornings, and I have walked away with a lifelong lesson of having tolerance for folks who have different religious practices or even lifestyles than my own. So I hope that you can also see we can all be part of the stew and we can all work to make somebody else's vulnerable life a little better, even if nobody's looking. Thank you.